Hi, and welcome to this video, which will go through the steps to how to graph a system of inequalities. And so prior to beginning this video, I want you to make sure you have this graphic organizer. Obviously, these items on the left have not been written down for you yet over here. However, make sure you have this in preparation for the video. This organizer came from a blogger, equationfreak.blogspot.com, so thank you for that. Here, what I have for you right now is a moment to pause to write down what our steps for graphing system of inequalities are. So write these down as I briefly will go over them. And we're going to go through a problem in which we use these 7 steps. But when you want to graph a system of inequalities, you always want to write one of the inequalities in slope-intercept form first, and then you can graph its intercept and then its slope. You have to make the decision if you want a dashed line or a solid line. That obviously depends on if it's the or equal to symbol or the not or equal to symbol. The decision to shade above or below also depends on the inequality sign, as you see here. And then you'll repeat those steps 1 through 5 for your second inequality, and then we'll have your solution area, which we talked about in the previous video. It also is helpful when doing this to have 2 different colors. And so I'm going to do my first equation in blue, my second equation, I should say inequality, I'm sorry. My first inequality in blue, my second inequality in red, and this is going to make it a lot easier when we end up graphing this here at the end of the video. So let me go ahead and change my pen color before we start. I'm going to make my first one blue. And so here we go. So let's take a look at our first one. The inequality is the 2 inequalities they gave us to said solve the system by graphing. So the first one we're going to look at is 3x minus 4y is less than 4. And so here are the steps on the left-hand side. And so step 1 says write in slope-intercept form, which basically means I need to get this y term to be by itself. And this is a 2-step process. The first thing I want to do is move the 3x over to the other side since that's being subtracted to the 4y. So I'm left with negative 4y is less than. We always want to write our x term first because remember that slope-intercept form is always going to be y equals mx plus b, or in this case, y is less than mx plus b. So once step 1 is finished, we've subtracted the 3x over. I am now going to divide by negative 4, and I need to divide that by everything. That way it eliminates the negative 4 here, making y by itself. Now, we need to be very, very careful because whenever you divide by a negative, you need to make sure that you flip your inequality signs. Probably the number 1 mistake of all inequalities in algebra is that when you divide by a negative number, you need to flip the sign. And you can see prior videos or classes where I'll explain why that actually happens. And so what we end up with here is not 4. 4 divided by negative 4 is actually negative 1. And so we have y is greater than 3/4 x minus 1. So step 1 is finished. Step 2, we're going to graph the y-intercept, which in this case is going to be negative 1. So I'm going to go down to my graph paper and plot a negative 1 here in blue. Next is going to be my slope. My slope is a positive 3/4, and so I'm going to go up 3. So count 1, 2, 3. And then to the right 4 since it's positive. 1, 2, 3, and there is my second point. The question now becomes, so we've graphed our y-intercept, we've graphed our slope. Is it going to be a dashed line or a solid line? And so the greater than symbol, since it does not have the line underneath, means it is not equal to. And so that means the greater than symbol, which is right here, I'll box it in blue, is actually going to be a dotted line. And so I'm going to do my best here to draw the best dotted line that I can. It's helpful if you do this on paper to get a ruler, just so it's a little more accurate. Okay, so we've done dashed or solid line from our steps. Now I decide, do I need to shade above or below the line? When y is greater than the boundary line, greater is always going to mean above or more. But here's the y-intercept, so I'm grading everything above it. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick shade. Again, I'm using the same blue for this, and shade everything in. And if this was just a regular inequality graph that we've been doing for the last couple classes, we would be done our question. However, with being a system, we now have 2 or more inequalities to graph on the same paper. So we now have to repeat steps 1 through 5 for our second inequality. So I'm going to change to the red marker now. And we're going to now go through the exact same steps for x plus 2y is less than or equal to 8. Once again, we need our goal is to get itself to put it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. We're going to get 2y is less than or equal to, again, we want to write the x term first. And now I'm going to divide by 2. Again, everything gets divided by 2. Y is going to be less than or equal to, this one's tricky. This is really a 1. Negative 1 divided by 2 gives us a decimal. But since we want to write it as slope, slope always should be written as a fraction, as in rise over run. So I'm going to leave it as negative 1/2. 8 divided by 2, fortunately, is a nice even 4. And so now I have my inequality. So step 1 is now complete for the red. Graph my y-intercept. Well, my y-intercept this time is a positive 4, so I count up 1, 2, 3, and 4. My slope is going to be negative 1/2, so we need to go down 1 and to the right 2, and that creates my second point, which is graphing my slope. It is this time going to be a solid line because we are using the less than or equal to symbol, and since it's or equal to, we're actually going to draw ourselves in a solid line. So once again, I'm going to try my best to freehand this. Okay, so solid line is done. So we check that off. Shade above or below. And so in this case, since it's less, less means shade below. That's the symbol right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and just use my red now to shade everything in that is below the red line. And we don't have to repeat steps 1 through 5, so we are finished this step now, and we now have our solution. Our solution area, and I'm going to take and use my highlighter for this to help you see it. Our solution area is where the red and the blue overlap each other. And so that boundary is going to be here to here. And then even though I'm drawing an edge here, we have to know that it does go off the graph paper, but everything that's red and blue is considered my solution area. And so this little triangular region creates our solution area for this particular question. Now, as a wrap up for this, what I would like you to do, and I'm going to solution so that I know that is actually where all my solutions are. I would like you to take a minute right now, right below this graphic organizer, in the blank space below here, I would like you to write out 5 possible solutions that are in this yellow area. Go ahead and pause this video, look over the solution area I have here, and I would like you to write those down. And while I'm not going to be able to predict what solutions you guys came up with, I can give you 5 of my own. And really, the easiest way to do it is I'm just going to plot 5 random points in my yellow area. So I'm going to go ahead and just plot. I'm just going to start with 3 so far, and then we'll kind of breathe. Okay? So there's first 3. So my first one, here's the origin. I go left 2, so that's negative 2, and then I'm going to go up 2. So my first solution is negative 2, comma 2. I'm also going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So negative 6, and then 1, 2, 3, down 3. So negative 6, comma negative 3, my second one. And my last one actually is also over negative 6, but this time I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So negative 6, comma 6. And actually, I'll just give you a couple other ones. 0, 0 was a possibility. And last but not least, we would have, I don't know, let's go with negative 5, comma 0. So these are 5 of my solutions. Obviously, as long as your ordered pairs fall within this yellow area, you're good to go. One thing to be careful of here is to make sure that any solution that would fall on a dotted line would actually not count as a solution because dotted lines, the boundary lines are not included. But anything on this solid line up top here in red would have actually counted, and that would be part of the solution area. This concludes the video on graphing systems of inequalities. Feel free to rewind and revisit any part of this video to recap the steps. Thanks for watching.